I'm Barbara Kaiser, and we are really glad you're here. We have 1 hour to convey some very important information and hopefully inspire you. So welcome, and thank you for coming. Next slide. So I want to go over the agenda that we're going to be accomplishing today. First, we'd like you to sign up for the May general meeting. And there's going to be a sign up in the chat. So it's going to be very easy to do that. And second, we're going to hear what the good news is in the world. Swing Left Peninsula is focused on good news, and we don't dwell on the bad news. And third, we're going to talk about where we are. And we have a very special guest today, Sylvia Salazar from Tono, Latino. It's really going to be a treat to hear her. And then next, we're going to talk about organizing and action updates, like the all events calendar, targets, letters, canvassing, registration, fundraisers, phone banks. And at the end, you can stay and chat with us and answer any questions you might have that came up during the hour. Next slide. So this is a very interesting chart that we show at every general meeting. And if you look at the yellow line going straight down, you'll see that we are 2/3 the way through April. So as you look forward, we have added two new things. One is Arizona canvases and Nevada canvases. And they're going to start mid-August and go through to November. So not only do we have letter writing, phone banks, other canvases, and canvassing, we have fundraising and other events. So this is where we are, and this is where we need to go.
Oh, my turn. So actually, I just want to point out, we actually added some new canvases in Arizona and Nevada for the spring, and we'll talk about those when we get there, when we get to talking about canvassing. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the good news today, I want to talk about money, because what's happening in the Democratic family with money for supporting what we do is just nothing short of amazing. Starting at the top, President Biden in the first quarter raised 187 million the first quarter of this year, which followed a fourth quarter of last year of 92 million. Both of those amounts are unprecedented. At the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, which is the part of the Democratic Party that's responsible for raising money for state legislative races, like the Arizona State House, the Virginia Assembly, that sort of state level race. They raised a record $6.9 million in the first quarter, and they're $28 million into their overall goal of 60 million. So Democrats are now raising huge money for state level races. And then in our own backyard, Rudy Salas and Adam Gray both raised over $1 million each in Q1 of this year, which it's one of the things that qualified them to be on the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's red to blue list, which is the DCCC is the part of the Democratic Party that works on those House races, and the red to blue list is like a special sub list where they really pour in a lot of resources to races where they think they can flip seats from red to blue, and the campaigns have to demonstrate that they have a certain level of momentum, power behind them, and so that fundraising money was necessary to get onto that list. So it's great news for our own backyard. Secondly, there's an enormous increase in the number of Democrats running for state legislative seats, and there's a really innovative fundraising mechanism behind it that I want to explain. So if you look at Missouri, right? This year, they have 135 Democrats running for 163 House seats. That's up from 98 last time. So rather than leaving, what is that, 65 seats uncontested so that the Republican didn't have to face an opponent of any sort, didn't have to defend their positions, didn't have to talk about any issues they didn't want to. All of that is now for the races where they have opponents, now they have to do all of those things. In North Carolina, they're up to 168 out of 170 legislative seats that are being contested. That's up from 136 in the last cycle. And that was a major goal of Chair Anderson Clayton, the young chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party. She calls those candidates running in races that basically they know they're going to lose, champion candidates, because she sees clearly the value of running everywhere. And then in Ohio, they're up to 95 out of 99 House seats with that are contested, up from 79. And what is really exciting to me about this is in Missouri and Ohio, and in Tennessee as well, there's a new sort of crowdfunding mechanism for these races. So rather than each of the candidates having to attempt to raise money on their own, which I'm sure they're trying to do, but in Ohio, they have a fund, and in Missouri, they have a fund, and in Tennessee, they have a fund where people contribute small amounts, and the funds guarantee to fund those state races at some minimum amount. In Ohio, it's $5,800. So candidates have enough to buy yard signs, to put up a website, to drive around their district, so that they can force those Republicans to defend the extremist positions. It's a reverse coattail strategy to get excitement and participation in more local races, and that bubbles up. And then sometimes, like it happened in, I think it was Alabama, am I right? I might not be remembering that right. Sometimes that long shot candidate wins. And then lastly, the Democratic team is really united in a way that I've never seen in my lifetime. There was the joint fundraiser with Presidents Clinton, Obama, and Biden. And then Senator Bernie Sanders and President Biden did an event together on drug prices. And they used to be two different wings of the Democratic Party, right? And now they're completely aligned. And a lot of that has to do with the work that we do, I believe, because our work has enabled the president to be more progressive than the Democratic president has been since I've been following politics. Back when Ronald Reagan came in, that was kind of the end of progressive Democratic politics at the presidential level. And I think, and because of all of the work that we do, the president's able to be much more progressive than I've ever seen. So I think we're in a really strong position for a lot of reasons, and it's exciting to see what the Democratic Party can do when we are united like that and we are all rowing in the same direction. Okay, so that's the good news. And the other good news is that we have Sylvia Salazar with us today. She's the founder of a new media company called Tono Latino, and she produces political content for Latino and non-Latino audiences in the US, usually with an action-oriented chaser. She's the face of the X Lunario video series En Serio, which translates to seriously, and they ended up naming it En Serio because Sylvia was so fond of using that term because it has so many ways that she can use it in her videos. She was recently at the White House. You can see some photos here of her in front of the White House and at the podium in the briefing room. And she was briefed ahead of the President's State of the Union, along with other new media companies like Midas Touch, like Aaron Rupar's Public Notice, media companies that have sprung up to fill the void that's been left by historical legacy media really not doing a very good job of informing us about what's happening. So she's another in that vein. And Sylvia, welcome. We've met early last year, and I really thank you so much for joining us. We've been doing a lot of work together, but I hadn't until we were prepping for this meeting, I didn't have I hadn't really taken a really close look at a lot of your different work, so I really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with people today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and when and why you got started, how you got started? I know it wasn't Tono Latino right at the beginning, so tell us a little bit about that history.
Yes, thank you, Laura. I am Sylvia. I'm a Colombian immigrant. I came to the United States in 1998 to go to college. And I went to school in Miami for computer engineering. And then I moved completely across country diagonally to Oregon, where I live now, to work for Intel. And I worked in the semiconductor industry for almost 12 years. And then the 2016 election happened. And I was shocked, as I imagine most of you were, by what happened. And then after the Women's March in January of 2017, I started to look at the numbers, and I was blown away to see that the Latino voter turnout at that time had been consistently below 50% in the previous 6 presidential elections, including the 2016 election. And that just devastated me. There's a lot of reasons why that is, and I believe one of them is the lack of information for Latinos by Latinos. So just like many people here probably follow Robert Hubble, I also started a daily newsletter, but it was in Spanish. And I started this in May of 2017. But as I said, I'm a Colombian immigrant. I didn't study government or politics in the United States. So I had to teach myself all these things that I never grew up with, like gerrymandering or the filibuster. And I started this to inform people, primarily Latinos in the United States, about what's going on in politics, and also encourage them about the importance of voting and getting involved to create change. Because that's not honestly something that we grew up with, at least in Colombia, where I'm from, or other Latin American countries. And then I learned that Latinos watch a lot more video than any other demographic. So in 2018, I started making videos.
Yes. And so you realized we're here at Swing Left Peninsula, or have been in the past, extremely text-based. You know, most of our information was conveyed in email, right? Even these meetings are new, where we, have personal interaction in this format. So what I love about a lot of your videos is that they're really funny while they inform. So I want to play a clip of one that's part of a series that you call Evil Extremists. And we're going to play the English language one. And then there's a Spanish, it's a version, it's sort of related. It's not the same content, but it's a different take on how to do it that you adapted and, customized to a Latino audience. So Bruce, if you could play this one, Evil Extremists.
Good afternoon, I have Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on the phone. Evil Extremists, how can I help you? Oh, Kevin, hi. Yes, I called earlier because I want to go over your plan. Were you able to cut veterans' medical care? Oh, by 22%? That's how you were. Oh, that is wonderful. Does the plan include a way for...
And if you could go to the next slide, this one, Sylvia, explain why and how this is different.
Yes, I wanted to do something a little bit different with a different flavor for my Spanish-speaking audience. So I created a series where we gossip about politics, and I pretend to call someone and tell them the juicy details about something. Like the one we're going to see is about me talking about the whole Clarence Thomas scandal reported by ProPublica. And I make these videos with these funnier themes sometimes so that I don't, look like a teacher pontificating about something. But I also always try to include screenshots of reliable sources in case anyone wants to read the actual article later. You'll notice that on this one, I ran into the challenge that I couldn't find the news in Spanish to put on this video, so I had to use the headline in English.
¿Tú escuchaste el chisme de lo que está pasando con la Corte Suprema? No, por Dios. O sea, necesito que te sientes. Imagínate que el mes pasado, ProPublica descubrió que había un multimillonario republicano que le estaba dando desde hace 20 años regalos a uno de los jueces de la Corte Suprema. Sí.
So I think Of the people that I know, you're unique in aiming things at different audiences in this particular way. And you also are a bridge. You're one of the few people who's doing work in this area who's a real bridge. So when the media company Univision aired a really softball interview with Donald Trump in November, it was a big story even in the English language press, right? It was enough of an earthquake that it made, the New York Times, it made the Washington Post. But I had barely heard the word Univision and I didn't understand why. And so tell us what happened when that interview happened.
Yes, a colleague sent me an email asking me if I had already talked about the whole Trump Univision interview. And I knew that if this specific person was asking, this was really important for me to cover. And I wasn't planning on making videos that day. That day I had come out of a 4-hour filming session for the YouTube channel that Laura mentioned. So I was absolutely exhausted. I usually don't even want to talk to my own family because I'm so tired. But okay, I already had hair and makeup done. So I pulled my tripod and I talked to the camera for 4 minutes, just like pretty much ad-libbed with what I knew. And I posted this thing at around 8 p.m. at night and I went to sleep. The next morning by 7 a.m., the video on TikTok alone had over 130,000 views and it was getting about 10,000 views per hour. And this just gave me a panic attack, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Someone had sent the video already to Simon Rosenberg. So by the time I called into his Hopian community gathering that morning, he asked me to send him the video so that he could include it in his newsletter because he had subscribers asking about what happened. And at the same time, I was also getting tons of questions and requests in the comments of the video asking me to do the same version in Spanish. The problem that I had is that I couldn't even remember what I talked about because I didn't have a script. But all these people really wanted to send the Spanish version of the video to their family members who consistently watch Univision and didn't know what happened with this like beloved channel for the Latino community.
So I love this story for a lot of reasons one reason I love it is because Simon then shared that video in English with not just with 20,000 people in his community, but with 20,000 people who by and large were very active, engaged organizers. That community's up to like 60,000 people now, but in the time I'm talking about, it was kind of the early adopters were even more like national organizers. So then they all had that information which we got, by watching a 3-minute video. And then I felt like, wow, I had no idea what a huge deal this was. And I completely get it now. And now we're going to play just the beginning of the Univision clip. It's the next one, Bruce.
Okay, let's talk about Univision. Univision is a Spanish language cable news channel that merged with the Mexican media group Televisa back in 2021. Now, in 2020, Trump referred to Univision as a leftist propaganda machine and a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party.
So when I just saw that opener, I kind of realized like, holy cow, now, Univision has gone down the rabbit hole for Donald Trump. And it just really brought home to me very quickly. And the rest of the video goes more into it, like that was something we all needed to know. And obviously that one was extremely topical. Like it happened, you cranked it out, it was done. You did the same for when the State of the Union address, when you were covering that. You also do things that are broadly educational, like you mentioned gerrymandering. They're still funny though. You might think gerrymandering is a dull topic, not when Sylvia's doing it. But then you really try to drive action. So when I said like we're very text-based in our driving action, you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it in a way that with video, basically. So give us an example of something like that.
Yes, because like I mentioned earlier, Latinos watch more videos than any other demographic. So we're not like email fans like many of you are. So I have to do it over video. I recently talked, like last week, I made a video about what happened with the Arizona Supreme Court decision. And I broke it down and then I gave people things they can do in order to change this. And I made this both in English and in Spanish, and I posted both to Instagram and TikTok.
So let's play the Arizona video real quick, Bruce. It's the next one.
The Arizona Supreme Court just reinstated an abortion ban from 1864. There is hope. There's currently a movement in Arizona to collect enough signatures so that they can put a ballot measure on the November 2024 ballot. Visit ArizonaForAbortionAccess.org so that you can find a nearby.
And then, so we, as I mentioned, Sylvia and I have been working together since early last year. And one of the things we decided to work on for this year is based on some work that Swing Left Peninsula did just as a pilot in 2023. We created you probably heard us talk already about voting on day one, voting early, in order to drive Democratic turnout, that we want to bank the early vote, and we already want to have a big lead by the time we get to election day. And that's a new strategy for us. It's a different strategy from what the Republican Party, particularly the former guy, talks about. And so we decided to try making a video. And we made a video. We first made one about Ohio, and then we were asked to make one for the Virginia elections in November of 2023. And so we did, and I just want to play that for you and then tell you what Sylvia and I are planning to do for 2024. So last one, Bruce, the Virginia one.
Hey Virginians, what's an easy way to boost voter turnout this fall? Vote on day one, September 22nd. When you're a day one voter, campaigns won't call or canvass you before the election. You've already voted. The more voters vote early, the more people campaigns can contact.
So we are, and if you want to, you can stop sharing now, Bruce, if you want. So we're going to make those vote on day one videos for the 12 Swing Left super states, and we're going to make them in English and in Spanish. And we're doing this sort of like Sylvia's Univision story. We decided to do it because people saw those Ohio and Virginia videos, and they knew where to find me. You know, they knew what Swing Left Peninsula is, and I started getting requests like, could you make one for this or that other election? And as you know, in the United States, in every state, the voting rules are different, right? Like the voting period is different, how you get your ballot is different, where you can vote early is different from where you can vote on election day. So each video is going to be both motivational, like do this because it helps us win, and it's also going to be informational. So, you know, if you're talking about Ohio, for example, we explain you can only vote early in one location in each county, and here's how you find it, right? But we can't just translate the words into Spanish to make that work for Latino audiences. So, Sylvia, can you explain what we're going to do for the Spanish language ones?
Yes, and in Spanish, we have to do things a little bit different. So if you think about it, the Spanish-speaking voting community is primarily a group of people who didn't grow up here in the United States, and we grew up with very different systems related to elections and voting. So for example, in Colombia, where I'm from, every citizen is automatically registered to vote when they turn 18. We don't have to go register. The only thing we can do if we want to is change the polling location so that it's more convenient to us. We aren't familiar in our countries with early voting, mail-in voting. Everybody votes on the same day, which is a Sunday. Everything is closed. Everyone votes in person. Sales of alcohol have stopped since the previous Friday night. There is no culture of voting early or voting by mail. So we have to do a lot more of an education campaign around these things. And not only that, many of these voters are embarrassed or afraid of making mistakes. So if they don't know how to vote or how to ask for help, sometimes they don't even know that they can ask for help. They'd rather not vote because they don't want to get in trouble. So they could be registered, but they don't want to screw it up and get in trouble. So they just give up and they don't vote. So we have to do more of an education about how the process works overall.
So that's what we're going to work on. I've learned a lot from you already about video, and we will have these as a bundle that people can use in their states. And we're going to share in the chat the various places you can find Sylvia on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. And then in the course of prepping for this meeting with her, I learned that she is launching a Patreon group channel video thing. I don't actually know that much about Patreon, but can you tell us a little bit about why you're doing that?
Yes, Patreon, kind of like Substack, similar concept. It's going to be a paid subscription community where I will be able to share premium content that I'm not really comfortable sharing on public places like Instagram, where I have no control over the audience. So for example, I think an important topic right now is for people to get more information about RFK Jr. and why he's such a dangerous candidate. But I don't want to make public videos that are going to amplify his messaging and attract armies of trolls to my page. What I do want to do is equip my community with the knowledge so that they can articulate and have conversations about this man, but do it in a safe space for them and for me. And the other issue is, I don't know how many people here know that Meta/Facebook, Instagram, Threads have decided not to recommend political content on their platforms. And this has significantly impacted content creators like myself. They announced this earlier, and they turned this thing on, or turned it off, I guess,
Right.
over the last 30 days. And my reach has dropped by like 80 or 90% in the last 30 days. So people like Jess Craven, myself, trying to make videos to educate people, we're not reaching those people.
So I'm really, really glad that you're doing that, because I have found the kinds of communities that are popping up all over the place in the Democratic family. Simon's is the one that probably many of people here are on. I follow one called Erin in the Morning that does, she covers trans news in all 50 states. It's something, I never see any of this in the regular press, and I can kick in my $40 a year, and she just spends all of her time doing it. I mean, it's wonderful. And then it's a way that people organize within the chat, right? So you already had people commenting on your videos, but I assume you'll have more ability to have conversations and a two-way thing going on with your people versus you kind of doing it this way. So I'm really excited about that. And you're launching that, I think, next month, right?
Yes, I am. So you can go visit my website and then sign up for my newsletter, and you will hear when it's ready.
So thank you so much. And we have a couple of minutes for questions. If anyone has a question for Sylvia, please put it in the chat. And I think Richard is going to our chat monitor is watching for questions.
That's correct. And I don't see any yet, but while we're waiting, I actually do have a question myself. And you might have already answered this in part, but just hearing you talk makes me wonder, how can we non-Latino allies support Latinos in this country to improve their access to good political information and familiarity with the political process?
That's a great question. I don't know if you all experienced this, but I remember specifically when I learned how to drive, that I instantly started paying attention to all of the signs on the streets and like that I had previously ignored. I need you to do the same thing and pay attention to see if you can catch when a website is translated to Spanish, or if there are Spanish materials available. So for instance, I was in a meeting last week, somebody was showing this amazing platform for educating voters, and there is no Spanish button, anything. I got all these emails about a social storm, about tax day. There's not a single asset or graphic in Spanish. So if more people can be asking these organizations, hey, do you have any Spanish materials? It goes a long way. And honestly, it goes even further if somebody like you, Richard, asks, versus Sylvia being the like squeaky wheel that's always asking, do you have it in Spanish? Do you have it in Spanish? Like, this is how I met Laura, because every single Zoom meeting about Indivisible or like any organization, in the like questions, I will like ask, what are you doing to reach Latinos? And sadly, usually my question is the one that goes unanswered.
Well, and when we met in that meeting, Swing Left Peninsula's main areas where we organize, the Central Valley, Arizona, and Nevada, all have huge Latino populations. So that was how we sort of started joining forces. So yeah, if I'm building something, you know, like this videos now, if I'm building it for an English speaking audience, I want it to be available to culturally appropriately to a Spanish speaking audience. And it just makes sense to do that from the beginning. It's a lot harder to like tack it on at the end.
Yeah, we do have some questions here now, so I'm just going to try to move through these quickly. So here's a good one. How do you feel about the polling that shows movement from Biden to Trump among Hispanic voters?
I'm a huge fan of Simon Rosenberg. I don't really pay attention to polls that much. I don't like it because it's just a way of making us nervous. It's just trying to freak us out. That this guarantees that they're going to get a click. So I specifically will never click on those articles because I'm not going to give them the ad revenue for those things. I know there's work to be done. I like seeing the presentations by like Navigator Poll or like these other organizations, and I like seeing Simon's analysis of the polls to see where we're going. I'm not saying we're doing great with the Latino community. There's a lot of work, but I don't want to like obsess over those polls. I think there's a lot of things we can do. Way to Win has been doing a ton of work with Latinos to figure out ways that we can communicate and gaps that we have. So one of my like super pet peeves with everyone is that the only thing they seem to talk about to Latinos is immigration. I'm like, okay, yeah, we care about education, infrastructure, healthcare, like all these other things. Can you please talk to us about other things? But a lot of campaigns, groups, they don't talk to Latinos. If they talk to them at all, they don't mention any other topic besides immigration.
Sylvia, you're not really like a data polling person. That's not really what you do. But Simon's got a whole riff on basically the way that polls related to Latino preferences are mischaracterized, that it's definitely worth listening to. It has to do with the fact that, I won't go into it now, but it basically undercuts the idea that Latinos are moving to the GOP. They're not. That's the short answer. And you're welcome to email me and I'll put you in touch with that, whoever asked the question. What else have you got, Richard?
Just a couple of quick ones. There's a question about, can we share your content with our friends and families, some in-law families, for example, the Republican side and friends who are Mexican heritage. Is the best way for them to do that then to just engage with you on your social media sites? We did post your YouTube, TikTok video, and Instagram, and also Bruce posted your website. Is that the way to share?
You can find me. So depends on like what people are using. So my number one place where I tend to share the most is Instagram, if I'm being honest. I'm trying to get more active on TikTok. It's weird how things happen. TikTok prefers my Spanish videos for some reason. Those do really well. Like if I post the same video on Instagram and on TikTok, it'll do better on TikTok for whatever reason. But I also am starting to share a lot more on WhatsApp. I don't know how many people here are familiar with it. It's a very important messaging application for the Latino community, and I have a WhatsApp channel. I don't know if Richard shared the link to it, but it's basically me sharing content, mostly in Spanish, because we Latinos use this app and we forward information all day, every day in there. And I think it's a really important channel to reach Latinos. And you can share links, memes, graphics, whatever. And that's where I'm telling you, for instance, I noticed, there's like all of these graphics. I don't have a single graphic in Spanish. So I put the graphic in English and then I have to write the translation. Mm-hmm. Immigrants are 13% of the US population, but they paid 31% of the taxes this year.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we'll announce when the Patreon channel is there. There's lots of places to find Sylvia and what she's doing. And if, I've learned in the last year that it's easier to share TikToks than to share Instagram, for example. So whatever you know how to share, the chances are that Sylvia has some content in that you can spread. And it's another great reason to have a Patreon community so that,
you have like a one-stop shop,
right? You can do all these different things. That's one of the things I find so confusing about the social media world when I started to join it. So I think we need to cut off questions there. Thank you, Sylvia, so much. I'm actually going to turn it over to Richard again to talk about our calendar and our Facebook group.
Great. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay?
Just give me a moment to screen share again.
Sure. While Bruce is getting ready, this will just take a moment, but I wanted to update everybody on the call today about some technology improvements we've made, and also to remind them about our Facebook property, which if you have not joined our Facebook group, it's actually quite a good experience. I'll start with this. The slide you're looking at shows our brand new events calendar, and the idea behind this is that there's lots of canvassing opportunities, letter parties, and a lot of that was communicated in a kind of an analog way by email or handouts, flyers. And Laura actually, it's her brainchild, put together an integrated calendar. And if you actually, Bruce, can go over to your web browser now, we can go to the actual live page of this slide. It's going to take just a moment, folks. And I'm going to put this into the chat, and I think that it's really very beneficial for you to bookmark this and refer to it. You can see that there's a calendar. These are all curated, vetted events from our known partners, so they are already looked over to make sure they're going to be strategic, value added, and a good use of your time. And if Bruce, you could go ahead and click on one, we can just see a little bit of the detail behind it. So you can see that there's a pop-up, it's got all the information, and then you can actually click through to the actual sign up itself. So this should look familiar to a lot of the folks on the call. So, we're hoping to have you use this as a handy resource, and maybe to take some of that email clutter out of your life. And this is maintained and updated very often. I won't say real time because it's a big job, but it's updated quite frequently, and it's just a very valuable resource. So Bruce, if you could go back to the presentation now. So I just wanted to give a little pitch for our Facebook group. If you haven't joined it, go to Facebook, and if you search for Swing Left Peninsula, look for Swing Left Peninsula group. That's our private group where we actually post a lot of activities. Another place you can find out about opportunities to get involved, but also some thought leadership, some news. It's kind of an interesting blend of different things. There is a public-facing group called Swing Left Peninsula, but when you do your searching in the Facebook search engine, look for Swing Left Peninsula group, click on the link, that'll take you to the landing page of our private group, which has well over 700 members at this point, and it'll ask you if you'd like to join. And I urge you to join because it's a good page, and we're always featuring interesting content on there. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Laura, who's going to talk about some of the strategic targets for the year.
Okay, this is just a quick recap for everyone before we get into talking about all the different actions that there are. So as you know, our closest areas that we focus on are California for the House races this year, Nevada and Arizona, basically at every level. And we have a special place in our heart for North Carolina for many reasons. If you could go to the next slide, please. And so in California, we're very focused on CA13 and CA22. The candidate in CA13 is Adam Gray, CA22 is Rudy Salas. Both races last time these candidates ran, they were very close. And as I mentioned earlier, they're both on the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's red to blue list. And so we're doing a lot of actions in these two areas along with Arizona and Nevada, and we're going to go through those now. If you could go to the letters slide. Okay, you guys have seen this before, I hope. If you haven't, so there's a lot of new people here actually. So this is a vote forward letter. It's sent to voters who are unlikely to vote, but they're likely to vote to Democrats if they do vote. It's a pre-printed template, and you add that the blue stuff, the blue writing is what a volunteer adds in handwriting. And we write a lot of these, and we store them until October. And then we mail them all at the same time at the optimal time to give the voters an extra nudge to get their ballot in or to go vote early or to go vote by election day. Go to the next slide, please. So we have lots of ways for you to get letters. So those include letter parties, which we have weekdays, weekends, mornings, evenings, in person, on Zoom. They're all on that all events calendar that Richard was just talking about. There's also a special party coming up on May 5th at First Presbyterian Church in Palo Alto. It's a very large venue, so we have plenty of room to spread out. It's also where we had enormous letter parties before COVID in the before times. So we'd love to fill it up again on May 5th this time. And the church overall has been a wonderful partner for us, really supportive. And then we've had a lot of group launches get going. This, by group launch, I mean a group of people who get together and write letters. They typically have a manager who gets letters from us and then distributes them and answers questions and stores them and mails them in October. So Channing House in Palo Alto is one of our biggest producers ever. They're writing again now. V at Palo Alto, it's a retirement community at Stanford. They've never written before, and they're just getting going this cycle. The Redwood City Huddle that Betty Casey founded after the 2016 election, they've already gone through like 8,000 letters just since March 6th or whenever we got started. They're doing a huge number. There's a big group on Kings Mountain. I say big, the number of people is small, but they write a lot of letters. And then Agenda for Democracy is also running a big letter program this cycle. And again, these people get letters from us in bulk. You know, they get thousands of letters from us and they distribute them out to their own writers, which saves us a lot of effort. So we don't have to manage those volunteers individually. You know, Agenda for Democracy has 67 people or maybe more than that now under them that they manage and write, you know, and help to write letters. And several people have bugged me for one of these thermometers. So we made a thermometer, Richard made it for me. On the left is the national goal for letter writing for 2024, which is 10 million letters. On the right is the Swing Left Peninsula goal, which is 7% of the national total. And that's what we did in 2022 and 2023. And right now we're tracking ahead of it. We've downloaded, distributed 11.6% of the national total. So we're ahead of things, which is exactly what I would expect because we got, you know, those letters were there and we're right out of the gate. We're all writing, we're writing. At the national level, you know, people come into the process later and a lot of the vote forward letters nationally get written, you know, kind of right at the end. But we're well on our way to hitting that 700,000 letter goal. And I am now going to turn it over to Judith to talk about canvassing.
Have to unmute myself. All right, great. So we have 202 days left until the election. Knocking on doors is a great tool to increase voter turnout. Studies have shown that it increases turnout by upwards of 9 to 12 percentage points. And as Laura pointed out, Rudy Salas lost by only 3,000 votes and Adam Gray by only 564 votes. So it makes a difference. I was canvassing in Patterson about 3 weeks ago. That's in CD 13, and knocked on a door with my partner. We had a nice conversation, and the man stated he was a Republican. Do you think you can support our candidate, Adam Gray? Oh, yes, he replied. I'm voting straight Democrat this year. Canvassing is like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You never know what prize you're going to find when the door opens. Next slide, please. We provide multiple canvassing events in CD22 in support of Rudy Salas. And as you can see, these are 3-day canvasses. You can, of course, come and leave when you wish, but it's a 4-hour drive, and we want you to make the best use of your time. To assist you, we have a concierge who will help arrange your place to stay and your ride, as well as answer any questions. And we also offer stipends of $100 per day to help defray the cost of the hotel and the gas. As you can see, we're holding loads of one-day events, canvassing in CD13 for Adam Gray and Jessica Self, who is running for the assembly seat. It's lots of fun. And in fact, Adam Gray is going to be in Patterson this weekend. There are no stipends, but the camaraderie is the theme of each canvas. If you've never canvassed before, every Tuesday, which means tonight at 7 p.m., there is a class called You Canvass, taking, yes, you can, that Obama used to say. So this class is really fun, and it takes you through canvassing soup to nuts and provides help downloading the canvassing app PDI. And Richard is posting the link in chat right now. Next slide, please. A registered voter is a likely voter. Typically, more than 8 of 10 registered voters turn out to vote in a presidential election. Because voting is habit forming, helping someone register and reminding them to vote in one election can dramatically increase the likelihood that they'll vote in future elections. And who do we want voting? The youth and Democrats. We combine the two in our college campus voter registration drives. Don't worry if you've never registered a voter before. We offer training before each session. You wear a t-shirt that screams Democrat, carry a clipboard and a smile, and ask people if they want to save the world from Trump. A few months ago, we registered, and I am not exaggerating, this is truth. We registered 247 new voters at Modesto Junior College. We ask everyone we register if they want to opt in to get reminder text messages with information about voting. This way, we make certain to turn new voters into regular voters. We look forward to seeing you there. And the canvassing events on Mondays, or the voter reg events on Mondays, some Tuesdays, and every Thursday now until May 9th. We're holding them at CSU Stanislaus in Trillock, Merced College in Merced, and Modesto Junior College in Modesto. And the great news is, so far, we have registered 1,556 new voters. Hope to see you there registering voters. And next is Scott.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thank you, Judith. Sylvia, Salazar, you are such an inspiration. You told us last week about how when you first started your work, you were terrified to make videos, and that you weren't a natural, and you certainly are a natural now. You told us how a friend challenged you to make a video by the end of the day, or you would have to make a donation to the Trump campaign, and you challenged yourself, and you did it, and the rest is history. Winning this year is going to take a lot of us challenging ourselves, I think, to go beyond what we think we can do. And for me, that's goes all the way from managing spreadsheets, which can terrify me, to bigger things. So I'm challenging each of you, please commit to doing at least 1, 2 out-of-state canvases this year. And we will be organizing trips to Nevada and Arizona, and I'll tell you about some of those in just a moment. You can do it, as Judith says, no experience is necessary. There's training on the ground at the Canvas site, and then there is the online training that Judith mentioned, which we can make available to you. If anybody has any doubt that Nevada and Arizona are shaping up to be even more important than we had thought, see today's story in the New York Times about just how critical they are to the Electoral College math. So about Nevada first, let me say, Nevada is a so-called triple impact, at least a triple impact state. The White House, for the White House, for the Senate seat of Jackie Rosen, and there will likely be an abortion ballot measure on the ballot. We are having our first Nevada canvass on June 1st and 2nd in Reno. That's a Saturday and Sunday. You would drive up on Friday and stay 2 nights and sign up. The link is, I think, in the chat. You can find it on our events calendar. Sign up and someone will get in contact with you about transportation, lodging, etc. The average temperature in Reno in early July or early June is a pleasant 77 degrees. So I highly urge you to try it out this time. And we will be having more canvases there, certainly in the fall. One more item related to Nevada canvases. If you have a house or know someone who has a house in the Tahoe general area from which canvassers could go to Reno or Carson City, please consider allowing us to sharing that with canvassers in the fall. And you could host canvassers, you could be part of the canvass, or you could allow canvassers to use it at little or no cost. If you have a house and are willing to do that, please email there. The email is on the screen, info@swingleftpeninsula.org, and we will get in touch with you. About Arizona, Arizona is at least a quadruple impact state. The White House, of course, the Senate, the intolerable Kerry Lake is running as a Republican for the Senate seat against Ruben Gallego. So there's the White House, the U.S. Senate, and some very, very important state legislative seats that are at play in Arizona, and an abortion ballot measure as well. So there is a trip planned to Arizona right now for May 3rd. I don't have the dates here. I'm sorry. It's in early May. The link will be in the chat. It's in early May. It's a weekend. You fly down on Friday and do some canvassing on late Friday in the evening, and then on Saturday and Sunday. And if you sign up, a trip coordinator will get in touch with you about flights, lodging, transportation, etc. So please, I know it's a big ask. An out-of-state canvass is a big ask, but it's going to be so vital to winning. And as I said, I hope you'll commit to at least one this year. So I'm going to hand it off to, thank you, and I'm going to hand it off to Barb Kaiser.
Hi. I am really happy to present a wonderful event coming up on April 25th at 5 p.m. And I just want to tell you how it all evolved, because Central Valley Matters was formed a few years ago by Shannon Edwards from Los Gatos. She realized that phoning, canvassing, registering voters is great, but there are groups on the ground that know Spanish, know the people, and are really effective. So they started funding these groups, and it has really paid off. And so they've raised over $1 million for the Central Valley groups. And now their biggest event is coming up April 25th at 5 p.m. on Zoom with Jane Fonda, age 86, and Dolores Huerta, who just turned 95. And these women are amazing. So Jane is going to interview Dolores. It should be really interesting. So 6 groups have been chosen by Central Valley Matters on their commitment, their plans, and their effectiveness in reaching voters. They're going to be focusing on California 22, which is the poorest district in our state. And they face things like valley fever, contaminated drinking water, lack of health clinics, low wages, and underfunded schools. So the 6 groups are Dolores Huerta Action Fund, the Community Water Action Fund, Loud for Tomorrow Action Fund, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, Valley Voices, and Delano Guardians. Now, 30 groups are partnering with Central Valley Matters to make this a huge success, because we want Jane and Dolores to be proud of what we as volunteers can do. So Jane was just named one of the recipients of the Time Magazine Earth Award. So she is out there all the time. So we want a large audience. It's free to attend. And of course, they're going to ask for funds for these groups at the end. But I want you to be sure to put it on your calendar and sign up. I believe the sign up will be in chat. So stay back if you have any questions at the end.
Thanks, Barbara. So Central Valley Matters is us funding year-round Latino-led groups in the Central Valley who are embedded in their communities. They're trusted messengers in their communities. This fundraiser I'm going to tell you about real quickly it's campaign fundraising. It's got a different purpose. So I talked earlier about how Adam Gray and Rudy Salas had a great first quarter. They're coming to the area on May 19th, and this event is being organized by our colleagues, Agenda for Democracy, who also write letters with us. The typical minimum donation is $300, $100 for each candidate, but because they know all the volunteering that we do for these races in CA 13 and CA 22, we'll put the link in the chat. You can sign up and you will be able to go if you give just $200, $100 to Adam Gray and $100 to Rudy Salas. And there's that customize button, so you can customize your donation. And actually, we are now working for George Whitesides too, because we polished off all the CA 13 and CA 22 letters. And right now we're printing for CA 27. So, but again, we're getting a discount because we do so much work in the area. And I hope if you have the opportunity, you will go and meet the candidates on May 19th. And then let's see, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So the great thing about phone banking is we have really friendly, encouraging coaches, which is terrific because we all come into phone banks as beginners and we build our skills from there. So in the world of campaigns, there's 2 methods really for one-on-one conversations with voters: canvassing and phone calls. And both methods give voters an opportunity to be heard. For some people in often ignored communities, that's a big deal. And it's one reason that phone banks are very important now. There's a few different kinds of calls we make over the election season. Right now, we're calling registered voters to weed out wrong numbers, to find out how likely those voters are to vote for Democrats, and to find out what issues are important to them. Doing that helps them understand why it's important to vote, and it also gives them a chance to be heard. We're also calling active Democrats to ask if they will volunteer. Those calls are particularly fun and rewarding. Later in the season, before ballots go out, we'll make calls using the cleaned up lists to make sure that the Democrats vote. We do that by helping them to think through their voting plan and making sure they have the information they need. As Laura said earlier, we encourage them to vote on day 1 to get them off the voting list so that we can focus on getting reluctant voters to the polls. Our phone banks are virtual, which means that everyone gathers on Zoom at the beginning. The sessions start off with information about where we're calling and why we're calling. We dedicate a Zoom breakout room to each target region. We provide training in each room, as well as one-on-one support when it's needed. Training includes how to use the calling system and the script. Typically, you use your computer as well as your phone. We use dialing systems that connect you with people directly without all the unanswered phone numbers. And we often have a dial it yourself system for people who prefer to do that. Just quantity matters. The more callers we have to make calls, the more efficient the systems are and the more success we have. It's all about taking shots on goal. The system dials thousands of numbers and makes hundreds of connections so we can have tens of conversations that lead to more votes for Democrats. We target races that are won by small numbers of votes, so these calls really matter. Above all, we need Spanish speakers. For people who are comfortable with Spanish, we can connect you with voters who are comfortable in that language. When you attend our phone banks, please let the organizers know that you speak Spanish and they will make sure your skills are put to good use. So we've been calling for about a month and we've already identified 2,700 voters for our candidates. We'll be calling them back in the fall to make sure they vote. So we're making calls on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I'm sure Richard's putting those links in the chat. You can also call North Carolina on Sundays with an organization called All In for North Carolina. We provide training in every phone bank, as I said, and we have a separate training session on April 25th for people who would like a nicely paced session, particularly for people who have never phone banked before. And that's a great opportunity to meet our phone bank leaders. The links in the chat provide details about where we call and when. Those targets can change, of course. We choose the targets strategically, which means they can change depending on the election trends. Oh, by the way, we're a DNC hub now. That means we're playing at the national level, and our phone and those phone banks will have a breakout room. So if you have questions, you can send them to info@swingleftpeninsula.org, and I'll make sure they get answered. Thank you.
Okay, and we're just going to
Sure.
wrap up by saying, remember, you can use this SLP events calendar. As we started flooding the chat with more and more and more links, we thought, it'd be really helpful if people had one place they could go. So that's why we created the calendar. So if you missed something, don't worry, it's on the calendar. If it's not, there's that big red button that says email us, and we will get back to you and help you find what you're looking for or answer questions about any of the events on our calendar. Okay. This is the end of our official meeting. Thank you for coming. And then you're free to go without being rude. Anyone who wants to stay and ask questions, chat with the leaders, bring up something that's on your mind. It's an open mic to have a conversation if anyone would like to.